All right, quick update on the Conor Benn situation. Eddie Hearn has now confirmed that the British Board of Boxing Control are refusing to sanction this fight. That's right, they've washed their hands of it, which is interesting because with the Dillian Whyte-Oscar Rivas fight, they did sanction that bout despite the fact that, from an outsider's perspective, it happened in very similar circumstances. Why could that be? Is it that the evidence regarding Conor Benn's failed test is more damning than the evidence regarding Dillian Whyte's failed test? Who knows? Maybe it's a combination of things. Maybe it's the fact that not only was there a failed test with Conor Benn, but also the opponent is going to be drained because it's a catchweight fight. Whereas with Whyte Rivas, they're both heavyweights. Heavyweights don't have to cut weight to make any particular weight. So who knows what's going on there? I have to imagine the British board will win a lot of favor with the public due to their stance here, putting their foot down and saying we're not going to be involved in this bout. Now, to clarify for people who don't know, this doesn't mean that the fight can't go ahead because Eddie Hearn has already said that he's open to working with foreign boxing commissions. There's no law in the UK that prohibits a promoter from using a foreign boxing commission to stage bouts in Britain. Frank Warren, of course, did that with the David Haye-Derek Chisora fight. Derek Chisora was suspended by the British board at the time, and David Haye didn't have a license because he hadn't fought for a while, because you have to renew your license every year or so. So that was the loophole that Frank Warren exploited. He used the Luxembourg Boxing Commission, right? Very obscure commission who I'm sure were happy to get their fees. So Eddie Hearn said he's open to doing that. Also, Hearn has come out and said that Conor Benn is cleared to fight. He's trying to be clever in terms of the words he's using there. Conor Benn is currently under investigation. VADA, of course, are the ones who did the test and found the substance. And my understanding is they have to come back with their B sample before the British board can make a judgment on what they're going to do about Conor Benn. There's also the fact that Conor Benn was being tested, and Eubank, by two different testing agencies. One of them is VADA, which is internationally known in boxing circles and in many other sports as well. And the other one is UCAD, UK Anti-Doping. And I'm sure Eddie Hearn and Team Benn are going to be arguing the fact that UCAD haven't found anything. It's only VADA that have found something. So maybe they'll try and say it could have been a contaminated sample. But again, we'll see what happens when the B sample comes back. And if that doesn't work, then they might say, well, we don't know how the substance got in his system. And maybe he drank from a water bottle that he wasn't supposed to drink from in the gym. Who knows? There are a million different avenues that they could try and go down, or a million different excuses or explanations they could try and give. And I know the lawyers are involved and all sorts of stuff is going on behind the scenes. And by the way, just to clarify my position, I don't know whether Conor Benn has done anything wrong. In the previous video, I was just giving an overview regarding these types of situations and how things tend to go down and the kind of procedures that go on behind the scenes and all that kind of thing. So that's just clarification. I don't know all the facts. So I'm not condemning Conor Benn, but I'm also open to the possibility that he has knowingly and deliberately taken something. That's why I had to lay it all out in the previous video for anyone who was getting the wrong end of the stick. You guys let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Again, I have to imagine the British board are going to win brownie points with the public for actually putting their foot down for once, because again, the perception that they had after the Whyte Rivas debacle was that the British board are biased in favor of big promoters like Eddie Hearn. Now, Eddie Hearn was in a much stronger position back then in British boxing than he is now. Could that have something to do with why the British board have washed their hands of this fight in this instance, whereas several years ago with Whyte Rivas, they still sanctioned that bout? I'm just asking questions here, people. I'm not coming to definite judgments. Eddie Hearn's tone in his IFL interview where he's addressing the situation is very corporate, very formal, not the type of tone that you normally get from Eddie Hearn on IFL. Also, he seems to be distancing himself from the situation a little bit, talking about, oh, the lawyers this and the lawyers that, and we don't know this and we don't know that. When Dillian Whyte was going through a similar situation, Eddie was very defensive. He was defending Dillian Whyte quite vehemently. Whereas in this situation here, he's not really doing that. So has he learned? Has he got advice? Have DAZN told him not to be too defensive over Conor Benn? Is he just hedging his bets? I don't know. But I just found his tone to be very interesting in this interview because it's not what you'd normally get from him. Now, Conor Benn has faced the music. He turned up at the workout and he answered whatever questions he could answer. Obviously, his lawyers have told him that certain things he can't say and can't discuss, but he isn't hiding. He's right out there talking to the media, and he says that he's a clean athlete and that he's been tested countless times in his career before, and nothing like this has ever happened previously. Now, in the interest of fairness, I do have to mention the fact that a while ago, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, Conor Benn was dropped from the WBC rankings for failing to enroll in VADA testing. And we've seen this happen with several fighters over the years. One of them was Conor Benn. And it caused a little bit of a stir in boxing circles at the time because people were speculating, is this guy on something? Because that's often a speculation that comes with fighters who fail to enroll in the WBC clean boxing program of VADA testing, because that's what you need to be enrolled in order to be ranked by the WBC. So yeah, it caused a little bit of a stir at the time, as it usually does when fighters don't do that. But very shortly after he was dropped from the rankings, he then went and got VADA tested and signed up. So was that indicative of him maybe having a history of wrongdoing with regards to PEDs? I don't know. Again, I'm just asking the questions here, people. I know there are some people that get upset when I even ask questions. You know, don't ask questions. No, I'm going to ask questions. That's the kind of person I am. But it certainly seems as though the fighters want the fight to go ahead, including Eubank Jr., and the promoters still want the fight to go ahead. So from a moral perspective, how do you approach that? You see, there are some people who advocate PEDs being legalized in professional sports like boxing. Their argument is most of the top fighters, they believe, are on them anyway, but they just have cozy relationships with certain testing agencies and what have you, which allow them to always come up clean. So to level the playing field, you should just allow everybody to take PEDs, and then it will all be fair. So some people think that that's the way to go, but then other people would argue no, because when you look at things like bodybuilding and, you know, strongman competitions and stuff like that, the amount of money that you have to spend on, but of course, boxing is different to bodybuilding and all those other kind of pursuits, because as a boxer, you don't have to put on that amount of mass. But some people say that the amount of money that some of these strongmen and bodybuilders spend on PEDs is insane. I mean, literally tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And therefore, fighters, if boxing legalized PED use, then again, you've got an unfair advantage for boxers who have got more money. Because if a boxer's purse is only going to be 200 grand, he's not going to spend 100 grand on PEDs, is he? So the fighters that make more money are going to be able to afford better PEDs. So even that might not be a level playing field. But anyway, there are people out there, I'm sure some of them are going to turn up in the comment section of this video, who say that they don't have an issue with people fighting each other when they're both on PEDs, if it's all admitted and if it's all legalized. Other people, of course, do have an issue with that, because they say that when someone's on PEDs, they can perform to a level which they wouldn't be able to if they were off it, in terms of maybe endurance, physical strength, explosiveness, etc. And therefore, they're putting their opponents in danger. Maybe they're putting each other in danger if they're all on PEDs. Maybe boxing becomes exponentially more dangerous if PEDs were legalized in the sport. So again, it's a whole giant sphere of debate to be had around this subject. But as of right now, the Conor Benn Eubank Jr. fight looks like it's going to go ahead. If Hearn and Sauerland have to get a different commission involved, it seems as though they're willing to go down that road. But the thing about the fight now for Conor Benn is that prior to all this stuff, he had a lot to gain from the fight. Not just the money, not just the family legacy, but the fact that if he beat this middleweight, it would go down as a good win for him. But that's going to be a little different now, because if he wins the fight, people are going to say, yeah, well, you managed to beat a guy who was drained for one and you were on PEDs. So is it really worth Conor Benn going ahead? If you take the money out of the situation, if you take the family feud out of it, just from a boxing reputation perspective, is actually worth him going ahead with it? I'm sure he will, but is it worth it in terms of what he's going to gain from it outside of money? What kind of credit is he really going to get beating a drained guy when he himself was on, apparently on PEDs? Whether he deliberately took any substances or not, I don't know. Whether there was something contaminated that got into his system, I don't know. I'm not making any judgment on that. I'm just talking about the way the public are likely to see it. So let me know what you guys think about the whole situation in the comments below.